Okay, we ready to go?
You're ready.
All right, thank you, Ben. All right, at this time, I'd like to call to order the North Canton City Council Committee of the Whole meeting, August 31st, 2020, 7 p.m. Ben, will you please call the roll?
Member Foltz,
Here.
President Peters,
Here.
Member Warren,
Here.
Member Fonte,
Here.
Member Revolt,
Here.
Member Stretta,
Here.
Member Shroya.
Here.
7 present.
All right, very good. All right, first up on the agenda, Community and Economic Development, Chairman Revolt.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. We've got 3 items tonight. In the interest of brevity, the first 2 deal with technical corrections to make our process more to proceed more smoothly. If you were to look at our current zoning ordinance, and the clerk and Marty will probably jump in here, but we have merged both the process for dealing with our regulations, which we call text, and then where it's applied, specifically, we do that through the map. So what we're going to do tonight, propose tonight, is that we split these 2 into their own separate chapters. We're going to keep 1181 to deal with the textual amendments. And then we're proposing in item B, creating a brand new chapter, 1182, that deals with amendments to the zoning map. And again, amendments to the zoning map would be those amendments where we go from a residential 50 to an OB, or we go from OB to Park and Rec or something like that. So if you have in your packets, if you look at 1181.03, this is a new piece that fits into some of our existing legislation. And it talks about how we're going to fix what we've got, what we call a loop, where we had an inadvertent step involving the Planning Commission. How am I doing, Ben? Am I doing okay so far?
Yeah.
And so what we've got here on 1181.04 submission process, we've got 3 points where we move through the process, and this fixes that loop, that extra step that we discovered the last time where we were tinkering with the actual process. Ben, what do you want to add to this? Or Mark?
Yeah, as Chairman Revolt said, when we amended this earlier this year through Ordinance 34-20, we gave the Planning Commission the authority to initiate amendments. And in doing so, we inadvertently created a loop where even if they started the process, we had to send it back to them, even though they had already given their recommendation. So in looking to fix that, we realized that having the 2 combined into one chapter was a little confusing. So for the sake of clarity, we decided to separate them.
Yes. Now, in this, if you go to page 3 of the proposed 1181 amendment, we have a brand new section that has been drafted. This is 1181.08. And basically, what I want to bring your attention to is section B, or part B of that section. And it's going to work in this way. If the Planning Commission sends us a recommendation, he's got the chart. Ben did a chart for us. But basically what we want to do is, if the Planning Commission sends us a recommendation and we don't accept it, we don't reject it, but we slightly modify it, we want to send it back to the Planning Commission just to make sure that it agrees with what we want to do. It's not going to have any veto. Obviously, the authority still rests with the council. But what we thought was we would give the Planning Commission a second look. And we think that's probably a good step, just to make sure that as we look at an issue, if there is something that we missed in the discussion, The planning commission may have considered it. They can bring it up to our attention. So Ben, Marty, does that pretty well cover it?
It does, yes. And essentially,
Go ahead, Marty.
sorry about that. Yes, this does put us in line with the planning commission actions as well as city council. It also allows for a member of the public to make application and have planning commission review that action and prepare a recommendation for city council's final approval and review.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments at this time?
Daryl, it's Dominic.
Yes.
So separating the text from the map, is that just for the ease of finding it electronically or just?
No, this is actually, there was, you could say find it, Dominic, it's to make it easier to read and understand.
Okay.
It's pretty much of a mulligan stew right now. It isn't very clear. We wanted to pull these out so there was no misunderstanding about how we handled, and I'll give you a perfect example. If you look at this on amendments to the zoning ordinances, we don't have any requirement, nor should there be, that we contact property owners, because again, we're just creating something in the zoning ordinance. This is between the public, the planning commission, and the council. We're not impacting any properties directly. We're not rezoning anything. So this deals with just how we amend the zoning ordinance to create a new use or disallow a use.
Okay.
Fair enough?
Yep.
Okay. If we can, then what I'd like to do is put this on for a first reading only for next week if the committee is agreeable. Mr. President?
Real quick,
Yeah.
can I ask a question? Ben, can we track this on Airtable or Granicus?
Yeah, so it's currently linked to the council's existing legislative processes, so it will be tracked on Airtable, and once Granicus is fully implemented on Granicus.
Ben, can you explain what that means
Thanks.
briefly for the people listening that don't understand what you just described?
So for members of the public, the Airtable and Granicus are two pieces of software that the Office of Council uses on the back end to track pieces of legislation as they go through all 15 steps of the legislative process in order to make sure that they follow the proper procedure.
Thank you.
Okay. I would assume that we've got 4 votes to stick this on the agenda for a first reading at our next meeting.
Yes.
Okay. Hearing no objections, then we'll go. Let's move on then to item B. Per Dom's question, this is how we will amend the zoning map. This is the actual application of the text to a particular parcel. And we've got some new sections here. This is entirely new. This is an entirely new piece of language that is drawn from what we had before. And you'll notice that in 118103, we talk about the amendment application process. And if you jump over to 118207, we're going to follow the same procedure about if we amend something, we will send this back to we'll send it back to the planning commission so it gets one final consult before we take action. As I discussed with Ben, here's a potential scenario. Let's assume we've got 5 lots that are zoned R70. We want an applicant comes in and says, hey, I want all these zoned OB.
Can you say what OB is? Say
Office.
OB, like when you say the codes, let people know what they are.
Office building. So the planning commission says, fine. They kick it up to us. We look at it, and after public hearings and what have you, say, listen, we can give you 3 of the lots office building, but we want to keep the other 2. residential. So that would be our position. Before we can act, we would send that back to the Planning Commission just to make sure it's comfortable with that decision, or if there was some other fact that we hadn't considered. And again, it's just an extra step to make sure that we're responsive and being transparent.
Hey, Daryl, does this account for just when council or administration want to bring things forward, or if the public decides they want to bring something forward with one of their parcels? Is the procedure exactly the same for the public?
It's all the same.
Okay, fair enough.
It's going to move through, Dominic. It's going to move through a standardized public process. Application, discussion, Planning Commission, then come to us.
Thank you.
And again, to go back to that Planning Commission body for one final look before we make a decision. Okay?
All right.
Okay, so if there are no objections, we'll put this on for a first reading for next Monday. Now, item 3, and I will tell you, I think this is the first time in 20 years I've ever seen a memo from a mayor asking for legislation for the Planning Commission. You'll notice in your package, the mayor has requested a number of amendments to our zoning ordinance to permit expanded outdoor dining. You'll notice in his memo to us, it contains a number of the changes that he's seeking, all of which will encourage outdoor dining here in the city. Mayor, you want to add something at this point?
Yes, thank you, Daryl, and council and the general public. In conversations with our city administration and other citizens in our community, and I just thought, from what I've seen and I've read from about the other communities that are offering outdoor dining now to help food establishments and restaurants being able to expand their operations. And I felt that, is that something that we can do for our people here, for our businesses? What opportunities can we have? And I tried to outline some bullet points there for us. Again, that they can expand their operations. Their seating would be more useful, properly maintained and used and planned with what they have to offer. And it allows them to do something more on their property. And I just thought that this would be an avenue that, if council would be considering this, that I think it's another way that we can help improve their economic returns. Okay? Because we're in this COVID-19.
Pardon?
We're in this COVID-19, and
yes.
How else can we help them with their food establishment? So I just outlined some things there. All knowing, though, that they're going to comply with the social, physical recommendations and distancing from the health department, the CDC, and our Stark County Health Department. But I just think it would be a great advantage for our establishments to have this opportunity to have some outdoor dining.
I think one of the things, and this is kind of consistent with what we're trying to do here, is we're trying to be more business friendly. And part of this request is to remove the requirement for a conditional use for outdoor dining. Just let the guys go out and set something up, as long as it meets health code, et cetera. It doesn't violate any safety regulations. We could have people who have outdoor dining that might be able to run, into October or November. It might be possible. So we think this is a great way, or I think it's a great way to sort of boost our local food reputation. And more importantly is, as we begin to work on this Main Street activity, we've got the ability to offer to prospective restaurants expanded outdoor dining. Let me give you an example. We've got a restaurant up in North Main. It's for sale. It's a large lot. It would be ideal for an expanded outdoor dining site. And that's the kind of thing I think we want to encourage. We may be able to get a higher end restaurant in one of these locations, because again, they can go from whatever current COVID is 40%, they can grow that business outside.
What are the restrictions now?
Well, you've got to take it through the planning commission, basically.
Daryl, there's a limitation of outdoor dining is restricted to 25% of the indoor capacity.
Yes.
So, and as opposed to being able to accommodate whatever their parcel will allow. So, places like places that don't have that serve food but don't have any indoor seating capacity.
You mean outdoor?
Gross.
No, I'm saying any place that has no indoor seating capacity should therefore have no outdoor seating capacity under the current requirements.
Oh,
okay.
And then, others may have a smaller footprint inside, but they have the capacity outside to hold more clients. Mm-hmm. And I think to Daryl's point, what he's referring to is that there are other regulatory agencies that come into play regarding the outdoor dining. He mentioned the Stark County Health Department, and the mayor mentioned the CDC and the State of Ohio Health Department, but also our local fire department has regulations concerning the safety of this. And then the building code of Ohio or local building code regarding the safety and the construction of, outdoor dining sites. So all those things come into play regardless of, what the planning commission would do. The planning commission could approve that, but if all of those other entities say no, then in effect it's no. So I think what we're looking for is, the mayor's looking for, is to provide some certainty to businesses that, hey, this is a permitted use. And as long as you meet with and craft your response to the local codes that govern it, you should be able to move forward without having to go to the planning commission for that.
And I this is Dominic. I also think with going along with the Main Street theme, this is really what people are looking for. Yeah. So we want to have fast and flexible options like this.
This is Daryl. I come back to this whole notion is we want our businesses to be economically healthy. And if a business has a relatively small physical footprint on a lot or in a location, but it has the ability to expand, it can significantly increase its volume of restaurant traffic by going outdoors. And let's give it a try. So what we need tonight is we just need council's sense to send this to the planning commission for its consideration, to have it make a recommendation and come back to us then for the ultimate determination. I'm told by my esteemed clerk that, first of all, is there any other discussion on this matter?
No, this is positive.
This is Stroya. Is there a way to expedite this?
No. No, we've got to make some changes in the text.
Gotcha.
So let's
Okay.
go through the process.
Okay.
I just think that all the questions, Mark and Dominic and Matthew, excellent, right on. And I appreciate if this can go forward for us and help our community. So thank you.
Absolutely, Mayor.
Here's what I'd like to do real quick then is because we're going to send this over, my esteemed clerk has suggested that we do just a quick voice vote. I'll make a motion that we send this to the planning commission. If I can get a second, and clerk.
Fold seconds.
Yeah,
Right.
Waren second.
All in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, Mayor, it's done, and I'm done as promised.
Good job, Daryl.
Thank you, folks.
And
I appreciate it.
Thanks, Mayor, for
Thank you.
bringing that. I think that's just a great piece.
Just as an aside, you take a little restaurant like BOGO down on South Main Street, one of my favorite carryout places. He's got room out there for tables.
Yeah.
He
That
could
whole
just-
square does.
I mean, you got all kinds of places. Mama Gazzardi, go up and down the whole area.
Yeah, it's really exciting to think about it. So, okay, we're done. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Daryl. Okay, next up, Finance and Property, Chairwoman Warren, you're up.
Shannon, mute.
Yeah.
Are we good?
Yep, okay.
Okay.
You're up, Steph.
Okay, we're going to have to amend the agenda because we do need to talk about the CARES Act. But the first thing we want to talk about is looking at how we are going to handle our law department. And I had a great conversation with Pat last week and the mayor, had a conversation with Jeff, and I know Jeff has had conversations with people. And I think the hard part is, you know, we've been in this position where it falls under council, but since we are all, you know, very part-time, it's hard to know what the mayor and what the director of operations needs. And so we had some really very honest and real conversations about that. And it's helped really to say what direction we want to take in that, which I think was really important. And it shows the collaboration and the working together and how both of us need to have trust in that system and know how it works. And I think one of the things we've done in the past, and Patrick has done this and he's seen this, is attorneys today, they're not all things to all people. Attorneys are very specialized. So if you're getting a divorce, you need a divorce attorney. If you want real estate, if you want trust, they're all different people. And we have found with our many different city needs that we need all those different people to really give us the expertise that we need to make the best decisions for the city. So in that regard, Patrick, I'll let you, I don't want to overstep anything that you want to talk about, but we've thought about a couple different ways we want to maybe go. And I think a number of us have kind of honed in on one way. So Patrick, is that a good enough introduction? And I just don't want to steal any of your thunder or what you're thinking.
No.
And
please, you know, you can steal all the thunder that you like. Well, I do think that's a great introduction to it. And, you know, having been around here and seen a number of different ways that this has been handled, and then now having had the benefit of serving you as the director of administration and understanding what we really need, I think the approach that I'm interested in the administration is making sure that we have a team that can present, you know, a deep bench and that has the breadth of experience in a number of different scenarios. And I think, you know, given that, you know, we're by nature of that looking at a firm that would provide these types of services. And even in that, even though a firm may cover, you know, 10 or of a dozen different specialized needs, there could still be a further specialized firm that handles a very niche thing that we someday find ourselves in, just theoretically. But by and large, I think a firm provides us with the depth and the breadth that we need to handle the specialization. And we do use specialized legal services a lot. And, you know, a long time ago when, you know, a generalist was really, you know, the forefront, what you need, the times were a lot simpler then. And the types of legislation that we were doing and the things that we were getting into weren't as sophisticated as they are today. So if we were looking at it from that standpoint of a firm, to me, then it looks like much of what we do already with other service contracts. This would be a service contract to provide legal services. And like all of our other contracts, it would fall into an administrative process that we go through. And I don't know that everybody knows this, but one of the processes that we introduced when I became the administrator was all service contracts go through a quarterly performance review where we invite the service provider in. We have frank discussions about how good it is or how bad it is. And they get to offer their insight as to what they like or don't like about the city. And we come to an understanding of what we need to do over the next 3 months to get us to the next quarterly review and keep us on track. So it doesn't matter whether that's insurance, it doesn't matter if it's window cleaning, floor cleaning, if it's IT services, whatever the service agreement is for, it gets this in-depth quarterly review. I like that in this particular case with legal services. We treat it like we would any other service contract. As far as implementing that service contract, talking and collaborating with the finance department on their experience in that, another benefit that a contract gives us is that if we were to obtain these services and in essence buy a bank of hours at a discounted rate from a firm, and it allows us to spread those hours out to each department based on their analysis from their superintendents of how much legal service work they need generally on an annualized basis. Now, we did the similar approach with the bank of hours when we went out and searched for our IT team. If you recall, if you were here, we engaged a firm in Cleveland that was not going to be the IT provider, but was going to be the firm that helped us find the IT provider and qualify them. And I think that's been a large success, but we bought a bank of hours from that firm that we could use on various steps along that way. And that seemed to work well. Gina was reminiscing on some of her experiences with that. And that was a common history that we had. So we could then put in every department's budget, when you see your budget for 2021, if we were to go this approach, just as you see a line item for IT services and telecommunication services and the whole thing, there would be another line in there for legal services. Not all departments need access to legal services equally. You know, there are very few instances, if any, in the street department where they need access to legal service. But perhaps other departments, particularly nuisance department, needs a lot of legal service, and we need a lot of it like now. So we might load their hours might be loaded up a little higher to kind of get things up and running. But just like our contract with AtNet for IT, it started out very heavy lifting that gradually, as we put processes in place, it made it more efficient. And I think that's what we would be looking for here from a firm provider is recommendations on then how to make the process more efficient so that it's easier to administer as we go along. That line item per se also puts it into a budgetary oversight so that whether it's city council or the administration or the finance department that may be looking at those spreadsheets that are printed out that shows each month how much of a budget has been expended, we can monitor that and say, wow, geez, you've budgeted for this many hours of legal service and it seems that you're blowing through your budget at a faster pace than anticipated. What's going on? So it provides multiple levels of financial oversight to make sure that we're not frivolously wasting and that we're getting our money's worth. Each hour of service provided would eventually generate an invoice that would go to, again, further oversight to administration and to finance as to what is going on. So if there was something simple and we thought, wow, wonder why this took 2 hours to do, it should look like it only should have been a 30-minute job. It involves a discussion. What happened here? What's going on? And unless there's some sort of explanation as to something that popped up that warranted a deeper dive, we would challenge that invoice. The police department, as an example, this would be a good one to illustrate. So generally, I would say from our discussions, the police department, doesn't use a lot of hours of the law services on a monthly basis. But where an aberration would occur would be like, say, take for instance the incident that occurred with the Black Lives Matter rallies in the city where someone decided to try to drive through the crowd of people in the street, and an incident resulted, and there was a lot of video captured. Periodically, that video is made request by news organizations for release of that. Well, we would want to, have that reviewed for confidentiality prior to that to make sure that we're not doing something we shouldn't be. That would be an example where you couldn't budget for something like that. It just pops up and you wonder why somebody may have used up an overabundance of their legal service budget because of an incident like that. So on an interim basis, the administration would like to approach a firm and talk about this and see if we can structure something in agreement of that and allow the mayor and the administrator to go out, for under $50,000 and structure something on an interim basis to try it and see what the feedback is and how it works. That's my overview. And Mayor, if you'd like to jump in there from your observations, that would be welcome as well.
Thank you. No, I appreciate your presentation. I think the opportunity to examine potential law firm. It would be a temporary process for now, but it could also be something that could expand, let's say, into 6 months, which would allow council to have an opportunity to be a part of the review process and see how this is working for us. So I think it's a good way to go in providing legal services for us.
Are there other questions or?
To staff or Jeff, President Peters, how do we envision like the meetings right now as far as a legal presence at the meetings? That's something more.
Yeah, it's funny you said that because it was Jeff asked and I asked, and we both kind of were on different pages, and then came around to the first one, really thinking things.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Discussion's been broken up. This is Foltz asking the question.
Doug, I'm not sure what maybe Stephanie's having some technical difficulties. Yeah. Can you hear me, sir?
Yes.
Yeah. One of the things I think in those discussions that Stephanie had with the mayor and that Jeff had with the mayor in talking about that has given us an opportunity to, kind of to define the role for the 21st century. And where is it that you truly need legal service advice at? Is it during the committee meetings when the legislation is being talked about and what you're wanting and that you want someone to opine if it sounds like there's something negative going on? But if are you looking at it at the regular meeting where you're pretty much just reading ordinances and motion seconds and there's really not a lot of value there, from what I could see. So I think that was the thought process was using the legal services where they're needed the most. And, maybe some of your agendas, it can go from week to week. I mean, you might say, well, we have one thing on the agenda. It's not really that big a deal. Doesn't really require anything. There's no reason to have them there and expend the service.
Right. I think, and sorry, I don't know what was going on with my phone. I think initially I thought the same. Well, we were on different pages and I thought, well, we need them there. But I think too, with kind of the different roles that everybody's playing, and that includes the clerk, I think he's going to be taking even a greater role there. We obviously don't need the attorney to read the legislation. And before that, the clerk had read it always. And so I think we can continue with some of those. But Patrick, you had also said that we could maybe even have them like on hold for the evening. If something came up, we were able to call them during a meeting. Is that correct?
That would
Or maybe
remain
not.
to be negotiated. I would
Okay.
probably say not. If you think that
Because
you're
we
going to
pay them. Yeah.
we pay them, right? So you might,
Right.
if you're going to think that you're going to have them, you might as well have them there.
Yeah.
I
I
don't-
thought you had said at one point you had called them, or maybe it was during a zoning meeting or a planning commission meeting to say they were on hold, or I don't remember. Did we talk about that?
Well, I think related to that, not exactly that, but what we had talked about was, let's say that we were going through the regular order of business. There's a committee meeting followed by 3 regular meetings in which legislation is read, that perhaps not all the questions that could have been thought of during committee were asked during committee. And maybe
Right.
at that first reading, a question comes up, and so you weren't anticipating the need for legal service there, but then a question came up that's like, maybe we ought to pause and wait till we get clarification on that.
Right.
Then you just bring it up the next meeting.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So you're saying, yeah, if there's a question, just get the answer from a law firm if we go that route.
And hold on.
And then that would be brought up at second reading or the next committee meeting. So we
Yeah,
have 2 opportunities to weigh in. Okay.
That's right. You could refer it back to committee and then hit it the next committee meeting and then refer it out. Or you could just schedule a special regular meeting following the committee meeting to deal with that one item.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
And Pat, Pat, to your point, I think it's important to note is that for the committee meeting, you can have your attorney sitting there, but we can have someone review that agenda on a Friday. So they can look at the agenda and let our clerk know, hey, you may have something here, or you may have a question here.
That's exactly right.
Because would it be mandatory that he even come, or he or she,
No, not at all.
right?
No.
So that would be, okay, that's great.
And I think we get more bang for our buck on that one. And I agree
Yeah.
with Patrick and the mayor. Not only are lawyers more specialized, we can be more specialized in how we utilize that service. So,
Well, and when we know that they have a bank of hours, we will be timely and we will be thoughtful in our conversations
holds us to a
and
budget.
really pointed, because they bill on the quarter hour. So,
It holds us to a budget, and I like that.
right. So Mayor, no extra talking.
I got my cue from Dominic. Thank you.
Right, exactly.
Staff, this is Daryl. Can I just
Yeah.
2 quick points. First of all, is that about 85% of what we do is routine. It's not controversial. It's not complicated. It's just bread and butter government. Don't need it for it. You really don't. The second is for that 15%. Remember that what we want that attorney to do is to help draft and review the legislation before it comes to us, to anticipate any problems. And our practice has been, and you've already really touched on it, is that if we have a technical issue, we have not hesitated in the past to give it a first reading, don't adopt, not emergency, bring it back, send it back to committee. We operate in that fashion now. So I wouldn't see us operating with any less care than we do now.
Yeah.
Agreed. And if we come upon an issue that has an emergency clause in it and we have to pause, we've proved in the past that we can be very responsive with a special meeting.
Yes.
We
Good
can
point,
respond.
Jeff.
We can respond in kind. There's no doubt.
Yep.
And I hate to say this, but we've also done one other thing too, is that we've acknowledged that occasionally we make a mistake, and we're not hesitant to say, hey, we goofed. We're going to have a technical correction here. And I think as long as we approach it with that, this system that Pat has outlined will work very well for us.
Agreed.
Yeah. I just appreciate the fact that we could both talk and say, what are our needs? What's best for the city? And then maybe come together on this decision that works best for all of us.
Yeah. And let me add one more point. And that is there are people who are going to read the charter and they're going to say, well, what does this mean? It doesn't mean that we have changed the meaning of the charter and that the mayor can contract it, but at the end of the day, the council controls the budget.
Right.
And so the council has preserved its prerogatives under this approach.
Yes, thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah.
Well, and to that point regarding the charter, the provision in the charter is that, council shall appoint an attorney in good standing as the director of law. And so, this approach has been done in the past. I mean, we can go back 20 years and, Tom Treeden was an assistant law director and he worked for Retzel in Akron, provided, a depth and a breadth. So, whatever firm that we contract with, someone would have to, be designated as the law director and, and various assistant law directors as needed. It doesn't increase the cost. It's a contracted service.
Right.
So
Yeah.
we would just appoint someone to fill that spot. And if such time would come that we would want to, terminate our contractual relationship and switch to a different firm, or if some future council chose a different way to do it, you'd be able to exit that and just appoint somebody else.
That's right.
Okay. Well, are there any other questions?
No, that's good stuff.
I think according to with Daryl, I like the way he always says, I think that we have 4 votes to move this forward to next week.
Yes.
Okay. That's great. Jeff, do we want to amend the agenda right now to talk about the CARES Act?
Yeah.
Yes. Daryl is going to make a motion to amend the agenda to item 2B, the CARES Act. Is there a second?
I will say second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Motion carries. Steph, carry on.
Okay. So as you know, we have received money from the CARES Act. And some of the things that we have spent it on are just those items we even talked about tonight, the Grania system and some of our different software systems. And we have used the money, which was over $325,000, I believe. Well, the government has come through again. So I guess we all have, but we will be receiving another approximately $175,000 to spend, hopefully by December 31st. They had asked that if we weren't using the monies to return so that they could reallocate, and we will definitely be using the monies. Some of the other things that we've used the monies for are touchless systems in restrooms, and I know Brian Hill, and thanks, Brian, for working on possibly the touchless toilets. I know some bids came in a little bit high, but working with some other vendors. So updating all of those facilities and parks and our main offices and things. So we definitely appreciate the money and have used it. And thanks for the administration and Gina and her team and being creative and how we can use this to make the city even better.
I like it.
All right. So if there are no, and I think, Gina, we need that on emergency for next week, correct?
Yes, please.
Okay. Okay. So if I'm pretty sure we have 4 people on that want to move that forward. And so we'll do that for next week.
Okay. Great.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Steph. Okay. Next up, ordinance rules claims. Chairman Stroya.
Thank you. We're going to listen to a presentation from Ben here. He says 20 minutes. I'm going to time you, Ben. So take it away, buddy.
So Chairman Stroya said, I'll try to keep it as short as I can. So this is just a presentation to go with the report you guys have all received at various different times about the records maintained by the Office of Council. So to start, I just want to talk about the records as I inherited them when you all were kind enough to select me as your interim clerk, and then in April as. So first, records were kept in 5 places. The clerk's office plus some cabinets in the hallway that support the clerk's office. Finance department safe. The council cage, as we call it, jokingly, but it's really our records retention area in the basement of the hall. The council's computer server, and then the city's YouTube page. So each of these locations had different records, as you can see on screen, maintained in them, but they all had kind of similar themes of needing some organizational help. So there are 5 main things that were identified as issues with how records were kept. So first was that when I came into the office, I didn't have a current RC2 form, which is the retention. Most current one I had was from 2005, so about 15 years old. Second, there were a lot of duplicates, obsolete, or unnecessary files. Third, filing system was dependent on subjective identifiers. So to give you an example of that, if I had a special assessment for sanitary sewer on Main Street, it could be filed under special assessments, filed under sanitary sewer, it could be filed under Main Street projects, and finding it was kind of dependent on thinking the same as the person who filed it. Fourth, there was a lack of referencing, so related documents and folders were not cross-referenced with each other, so it was difficult to find other supporting documents. And then finally, some tracking and maintenance had been neglected. So an example of that is like the RC2. In conjunction with that, yearly you should do a records audit, submit some records for destruction, but that hadn't been done for quite a few years. So step 1 was to identify all of the records that I had. And that became 5 key records categories. Fifth one is, first was legislative records, which would be everything related to passing legislation. So your agenda for tonight, your council packet for tonight, PowerPoint you're looking at right now would all be legislative. Second are office records, so they're non-legislative. The Office of Council receives liquor permits, member files, or bankruptcy notice. Third is zoning or land records. So the Office of Council is the recipient of petitions for annexation or petitions for vacation, or as we just talked about earlier tonight, zoning amendment changes. So all the files related to the real property. Fourth, and arguably most importantly, are the permanent and historic records. This includes council's journal, the codified ordinances, the record of legislation. All those things that truly document what the city did and why. And then the 5th subcategory is clerk's files, as I call them. So these are management and operational things like templates, blank forms, instructional pages. So for instance, a blank agenda request form hasn't yet been filled out would be. This led me to create a new RC2, which was actually just very recently approved by our Records and Archives Commission. And I identified 26 record types that are maintained by the Office of Council. There will be one change to that RC2, which is that union contracts are going to be transferred to the Department of Administration to with all other contracts. So the second step was creating a solid new retention system that even if I got hit by a bus tomorrow, all of you could find records for the public. So first, legislative files. These files are now organized by year. Those years are titled not just by the year, but also by the council sessions. For instance, as you can see on screen here, 2019 was the 89th council second session of it. So what that naming system does is it increases the potential for cross-reference. So not only can I find it by the year 2019, if I know I'm looking for the 89th council, I can find it that way too. Within each year, files are then organized by document type. So there's a file for agendas, a file for legislation, a file for legislation requests. That's because that's how they are maintained on records form, the RC2 that we submit. And then each type of document has a uniform naming system. Not legislation, going to have an 8-digit numeric code for the date it was on council's agenda. So our example here on screen is 06/15/2020 council. And then if it is legislation, it's going to start with the 3-letter abbreviation for what type of legislation. Here we have ordinance. Then the legislation number, so 37-1994, and then a summarized title of that legislation. So here we have a literary reference authorizing the mayor to enter a contract for the installation of big. So every document in all of these folders is named in this way so that you can find it by date, you can find ordinance number, you can find. Again, it's all to increase that cross-referencing. Office files are labeled fairly similarly. So again, we have subfolders based on the type of document. That's how the RC2 so liquor permits, research, correspondence. Correspondence, because it's referenced most often by date, starts with the date and then kind of short title and then the author. So our example here is January 1st, 1802, letter to Danbury Baptist, Mr. Jefferson. And then all other files that don't necessarily have a very specific date related to them have descriptive naming, which is, I guess, a term I have coined for including as many possible cross-references as I can. So, for example, our 2012 Fire and EMS Labor Union that has 3 potential cross-references. Here, it has Fire and EMS, and then it has that it's a labor union. Or then for the liquor permit, again, we have 3 cross-references. We have Applebee's, we have that it's a liquor permit, and then we have the address that it's. Zoning or land files are filed much the same way to office files. They're by type, so they're for annexations, of full applications, and they have descriptive naming. So they include year, what type of land thing they are, and then a short description of what area it relates to. It might be the 2013 Walsh University annexation. So again, you have those 3 points of cross. And then finally, permanent or historic records. So records of legislation, or I should preface this with, by law, all of these, or most of these, must be kept in hardcover book form. So I must have a paper version available in the office. I can't just keep. So records of legislation, which is the picture you see on screen, those books are kept in a dedicated cabinet under lock and key in the clerk's office at the moment, and we currently use Wilson Jones archival materials to produce those. Each book is then uniquely named with a volume number, years it covers, and the time frame it covers, and the legislation. So, for example, this year's might end up being Record of Legislation, Volume 40, Ordinances 1/2020 to 97/2020, covering January to December of 2020. Council's journal, commonly referred to as the Record of Proceedings, historically bound in way as the Record of Ordinances. But this, for what the proceedings are, this is inefficient and unnecessarily expensive, because the minutes are much more replicable than legislation. But that being said, we are still binding them in semi-hard covers on archival paper, and they are again uniquely labeled with record of proceeding, the council and the session it applies to, time frame it covers. Currently, these are still in finance's safe, dedicated filing cabinets under lock and key, because their new home, which we'll talk about later, is not yet ready. So next I'd like to talk about what have we accomplished. And I'd like to preface this by saying that almost all of these accomplishments are not possible without input and help from members of council, the mayor's office, and the many work in other departments here with me. And I think you'll be able to see why as we get into some of these projects. So first goal was organization. So I have reorganized council's office. There's a lovely picture there for you of my office currently. There's all the contents of every drawer are now posted on the drawer. The drawers are labeled with alphanumeric identifying numbers, and there's a schedule posted of what's in each drawer by its alphanumeric identity. Second, we did the former council intern, Ed Walsh, helped me do rough organization of council's page, the basement retention area. All the boxes have been sorted roughly by what's in. We are now in the process of going through box by box, file by file, auditing what's in it and where should it properly be. And then finally, for organization, we've created at least the rough scaffolding, a master index for important council records. So far what we have in there is all of the mayors of the city in their terms, all of the council members of the city in their terms, and the report says that all legislation in 1930 has been entered. Unfortunately, we did have a computer unexpectedly crash, and we had to go back to previous backup save of the database, and we're back down to just 1930. But thankfully, because we have built-in backup systems, now we were able to an older version and save half of it. Next, tracking the legislative process. So YouTube was fairly organized. All it needed was to make some playlists, what year they're looking for. On the right hand of your screen, there are new playlists. As we discussed earlier in this meeting, we've adopted two softwares, Airtable and Granicus, that help us track the legislative process on the back end, help automate some of the more time-consuming and potentially grammatical errorful processes like making an agenda. So they help us auto-populate an agenda so that there's no chance the clerk misnumbers it or that we forget something. And then finally, as has been tabled for now, but as you guys have seen that we've been working on decodifying the rules of council. Currently, council's rules are part of the codified ordinances. Hard to amend, potentially problematic to enforce, and mayor undue authority over how the legislature conducts its internal business. Because if the legislature wants something, in theory, the mayor could veto. So with Councilmember Stroya and Bull and former law director Fox, we've been diligently working to try and make new and improved rules of council that will hopefully be back to you guys sometime in the near future. Next was improving the permanent record. So, as is the first big thing on the agenda that we'll get to when I hand the meeting back over to Chairman Stroya, we've completely redone the codified ordinances. City save us money and bring them under our direct control and allow us to more constantly monitor them. Second, for a brief period, legislation was not being found in archival materials, and we turned to use archival materials. That's the top middle picture there for you is a picture of this year's legislation book, actually. And then third, we are improving the permanent record by filling in the gaps. So unfortunately, Council's Journal Volume 37 went missing. I'll talk about that later. That's one of the items on your list. And then with great help from the Department of Engineering, specifically Bruce Bernhard, he is helping me make zoning maps for zoning change ordinances that when they were initially passed did not have a map. But having a map will make them easier to understand for the future. And then finally, I was asked to touch on how we've improved record security. The steps have been taken to prevent loss or tampering of records. All permanent records have been rehoused in dedicated locked cabinets with access strictly controlled by the clerk. All records that are digital and we're in the process of scanning in all paper records are being backed up to the council server. And then council server is backed up to an air-gapped hard drive stored in a separate locked location, again with access. And then establishing lasting policy. To ensure that these practices continue, I've started creating a clerk of council binder or handbook that you can see on screen, and just filling it with everything that I learn, constantly being updated. That has also morphed and led to the creation of council's binder, and this is intended to be kind of like for freshman council members. Say, welcome to the team, here's the basic things you know. I'm hoping to have that ready for December at our organizational meeting, and I can give it to all of you as if it were your first time. Next, we made permanent inheritable email addresses that whoever is on council, public can always find them. So you can see Jeff's permanent email on screen is ward2@northcarolina.gov. This is not replacing your personal emails, and it really will not affect how you send or receive email at all. It's just that that address forwards to whoever holds. Next is a paper representation policy for members of council, which again is on the agenda tonight and we'll come back to later, just to clarify when and how council use paper material. And finally, to protect some of our important permanent records, such as the 100-year-old legislation books, again on council's docket tonight, we have a records viewing policy. So finally, the plans moving forward. Where do we go from here? So I've structured the goals over the next 3 years, and the intention of this is that we track it by council's summer break each year, and I can continue to give council where are we now updated, me accountable, and to keep you and the public informed. So broadly, what we're trying to achieve is referenceability of records, quality of the records, how we store and secure. So first, in referenceability, as part of the 2020 recodification that we'll talk about here soon, we want to build out and fully integrate our codified ordinances into the website so that on our website homepage, I can search chicken ordinance will come. For the second year, we want to have every piece of legislation that the city has ever passed and into the master index, so that we can easily reference it, pull it up, and do research for our own purposes or for public purposes. And then finally, by the third summer, we want to rebind some of the books that are falling apart and upload all those scanned ordinances. And just to take a very brief dive into what I mean by rebinding. Some of the ordinance and minute books, particularly those from 1920 and earlier that are 100 years old or older now, are in bad shape. Paper really just does not last very well over 100 years, even if it is archival quality. So some of those earlier books really need revamp. And so we'll hope to do that over the course of the next 3 years, and the estimated cost is about $3,500. For quality, tying into others, we want to scan in all legislation that is currently just first year. In the second year, we want to kind of bring civil services records into the process, improve them as we go. And we want to add descriptions to the website just to improve accessibility and ensure ADA compliance. And then our goal for the third year is to create formal rules and regulations for the Planning Commission and the Zoning Board of Appeals, similar to what already exists for civil service and council, just to make using those boards easier for the public and the members of them. Finally, storage, and what this really means is council's cage. So ideally, we want to go through the whole cage and revamp it to free up space, store records more efficiently, and be ready to continually create records into. As I said earlier, we've done a rough organization of council's cage. So this is a diagram of how council's cage is right now. Words in the white space indicate piles of boxes on the floor that we are steadily transitioning. Originally, what I wanted to do was to use this existing space and revamp it with new modern filing cabinets instead of wooden shelves and dedicated homes for everything. In talking to the Department of Administration about this project, it kind of snowballed into the entire basement storage area being. So we are working with the Department of Administration to create plans for what an entire basement would look like, how best every department can store its records, how the entire city better together. So what that turned into was a new dedicated plan for revamping council's with dedicated filing cabinets, again, instead of wooden. As you can see here, it's mostly vertical four-drawer filing cabinets, and the 3 lateral cabinets in the middle will double as kind of a records review. In total, this will cost about $5,000, but just to put that in perspective for you guys, one improperly kept record gives us a maximum liability of $10,000. Essentially, every incorrectly maintained sheet of paper could potentially be $10,000 liability. And so what I want to do is match revamping of the 3-year phased goal approach of the entire project. Each year will cost less than $2,000 total, and we've already made some savings in our department budget to offset these costs. And over the course of the next 3 years, install the new cabinets, revamp the have all of council records permanently stored in a brand new coherent system. So just my last slide is this is my final tentative timeline and of when all these goals will be accomplished. As you can see, it's kind of matched to collegiate semesters because completion of these goals is highly dependent on continued assistance of collegiate interns. Because I simply, as a one-man department, do not have enough time to do everything. Having those collegiate is really a boon to help the project done. And so with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Chairman. Right.
Thanks, Ben. I appreciate it. Coming from a background of compliance, I appreciate the depth that you've went to because this is a massive project. I mean, it is huge. I mean, just look at that timeline. and all this stuff in there. And I do want to address liability, because when you have a good record retention system, a good compliance system, you reduce liability. It's that simple. So I appreciate the time and effort that you put into this. Does anybody else have any comments about Ben's presentation?
Yeah, it's Vice Chair Foltz. Excellent presentation, Ben. Very thoughtful. Really, it's exciting that we're going to correct some things that needed done for many years, and that isn't to lay past blame. It's just nice to have someone that has this focus and direction for us to protect our records and our ordinances that have been around for over 100 years, and to really put it in a system that, like Ben had mentioned, it can be ascertained by anybody that would want it or ask for it. So excellent job, Ben. Well done.
I agree. This is Dominic. Hey, Ben, do you work on private jobs? Do you work on sheds? My shed needs a lot of work like that. Good work.
Thank you.
Excellent work, Ben. Unbelievable.
Okay, let's move on to part B then.
Hey, Ben, I'm sorry. This is Stephanie.
Oh,
Just one thing. I just want to just say, I mean, we hired Ben and we were talking about some of the different skill sets. I think this is just amazing what you just showed us, and it shows a different caliber. And I know we've had some people that have commented that, you know, we've had 3 different clerks in so many years, but we've done that because we are moving up and we have that different expectations. We're not asking Ben to type minutes anymore. We have a whole new kind of set of responsibilities and roles and what we want him to do. And the fact that you just did this, Ben, is going to change the whole way we look at things, the way administration looks at things, and just put us on a much smoother path. So this is exactly what we want to see in the city. And it was so the right move on both of our sides to move in this direction. And so thank you. I just wanted to make sure you're aware of that.
Thank you.
All right, anybody else? All right, let's move on to part B. So part B deals with streamlining the codified ordinances. There's a heavy cost to codification. We found that there's a lot of duplicative information, obsolete stuff, and if we get rid of some of the if we decodify, we can offer more timely updates. I'm going to turn it over to Ben to talk about part B.
Yeah, so the real intention of this project is, right now, as you probably all know, we contract with a company called Grain, who was recently purchased by American Legal Publishing, to update our codified ordinances. And that costs us anywhere from $5,000 to $7,000 annually, which to me felt outrageous when we only passed maybe 10 amendments in a and so what we were really paying for was their man hours to essentially edit Word documents for us. The intention of this project is to bring the codified ordinances back under direct city, so into our own Word documents, essentially. And then we can update them as we go more frequently, instead of once a year. And that will keep them more accurate, not just for us, but for the public. It will also save us a lot of money, because with modern word processors like Microsoft Word, updating a document, even the size of the codified ordinances, which one I have put on your agenda tonight is 650 pages, easy. Would take me less than an hour to make all of the changes that we've made so far. So the idea is really to save us money on the first end, and then on the back end, to ideally, once we have it fully under our control and supervision, to go through really intentionally and think about, is this chapter and its provisions really working for the city in the way we want it? And so a follow-up to this initial project would maybe the rules committee going through each chapter and really taking the time to think about, as we do this, we will no longer have to worry about that, oh, what will the cost be? Every change we make is the cost of our codification.
Okay. This is Councilman Fultz. I had a question, Ben. How much savings will this provide for us yearly?
So this year we budgeted $500, and we have only spent about $300 of it for website hosting. So it will save us $5,000 roughly
Per year. And just to go back to your presentation, that $5,000, I think you wanted like $6,000 overall to redo the council cage with all the cabinets or the organization, the materials that you needed. This pays for that right now, basically, or most of it, correct? So job well done here. Thank you.
One thing I do want to strongly emphasize is in doing this recodification, we took out a lot of Ohio revised code references that were copied almost word for word. And what that means is that in our traffic code and in our general offenses code, in the new version, you'll see that a lot of things are missing. So, for instance, driving under the influence. Those. What I really want to clarify is that we removed it because it was redundant with. So even though it is coming out of our codified ordinances, it is absolutely still illegal to drive under the influence. So nothing that we are removing as redundant is now legal. Our codified ordinance.
Can you repeat that like 10 times so people get that through? Because that's the number one complaint about editing this. It's not changing anything pursuant to the ORC. I want to stress that.
Correct. So in Ohio courts, our codified ordinances are the lowest form of law. So if our codified ordinances can be treated by our Ohio law, Ohio's constitution, federal law, federal constitution, and so all of these things that are already in higher law, we don't need to restate in our lower law. So the best way I've liked to summarize this up, as we've been talking about this in the past couple of months, is if it's the law in the state of Ohio, the law in.
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, this is Patrick. May I offer two things?
Yes, sir.
I would just ask that in that example that Ben has given, that if there are any other similar types of things that deal with, items that can be, cited by the police department, I'd like us to coordinate with the police department. For example, by removing this codified section regarding driving under the influence, does that remove the ability by local PD to cite and to have the choice of citing under ORC or citing under local ordinance? And having spent 9 years at the clerk of courts, I know that is something that police departments like to have the ability to do. So I would just ask that we consult with Chief Kemp on that before we reach a final determination on something like that. The other thing, though, that I wanted to say is why the administration is so excited about this is that we were never really a fan of the once a year updating or even twice a year updating, because when we would make changes to zoning, for instance, when Daryl, I think you remember, we worked on that sign ordinance and changed that. That didn't get updated until a year later into the codified ordinances. So people that were out looking through that website American Legal Publishing or whatever the name is, and they look and they say, oh yeah, you still can't have these kinds of signs in the city. Well, no, we changed that. Well, it didn't get updated. It didn't get updated until once a year. With zoning, it should happen, immediately, as soon as practical, because there are people out there that look through that stuff to figure out whether or not, what they want to do in the city. So job well done to council and to the clerk.
Thank you. Good points, Patrick. Thank you.
Yeah. Hey, Matt, this is Daryl. Just to add a footnote to what Pat said, the ability to update elements in the planning commission or sign ordinances, et cetera, is really integral to our economic development policy, because we don't know when people are necessarily looking at us. And so it's important that we have the best information available almost immediately, so we don't inadvertently lose an opportunity.
Good point, Joe.
Can I
Anybody else? Oh, go ahead. Yeah, go for it. Thanks.
Again, Matt, when I was in the police department, there was times when laws were repealed in the motor vehicle code or criminal code. And we would have to stay on top of that so that we could follow that if it changed within 30 days. But getting an update once a year or twice a year, it really wasn't that beneficial for us, from the police department point of view. So I think this is a good move that we can stay current with state or federal, law that changes. So just, again, I think it's a good move for our city to do this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Anybody else? Any questions on sections 1 through 8 on that? Okay, so I move to push this forward, seeing that I believe we have enough support.
Yep.
Okay. So let's move on to Part C. Part C is the paper representation policy. Ben, I'll let you take it away again. You're doing a good job.
So the policy aims first ensure that when council uses city letterhead, it can be properly tracked and documented as a public record. And then second, to ensure that you're not using letterhead or business cards to give you as an incumbent an unfair advantage.
This is pretty standard if everybody's read this.
Okay, I got something for Ben, if you don't mind, Matt.
No, go ahead.
First of all, great work, Ben, on this. This is awesome. But I do have an issue with with the business cards and the phone numbers. I believe it is Section 5, number B. Okay, because that's basically what a card is for to receive calls, to give them your name, and for a council person to receive either concerns or ideas. And people don't need to call just anytime you're in to wherever the council is. I think it's important that we have our number on that, because if we're working with someone, a vendor or maybe an economic development person or something, they want to talk, we give them the card so they can contact us about something. What am I going to tell them? Here's my card, call the clerk and he'll screen your calls and get back to me. I think that's a little unprofessional. So I'd like to strike that section there about not having your personal phone number on there. I don't see how that can concern any kind of advantage to election. I think all that does is give us better service to our constituents when they want to talk to us about something, and show that we do represent, them, and they can give us a call. So that part I have a little issue with. Section 5, number B, I'd like to strike that.
The reason we opt to not have personal emails or personal cell phone numbers.
It's not personal emails, it just says personal phone number.
Yes, but the reasoning behind excluding both was the same. That the members of council are elected, and there is a chance that every 2 years it might be someone So if you give
Okay.
a business card in October and then you lose the election in November, we want that member of the public to still be able to reach their local government.
But
Regardless,
it's a card with the person's name on it that it's not even elected there anymore. Why are they going to call that if they want to get in touch with that person about an issue, an award, or a regular thing? I don't think it has anything to do with getting, I mean, they're going to call that number and that person is going to say, well, I'm not the councilman anymore. Call city council or city hall. I don't see how that has any compliance that's going to be against any kind of election issues or anything. I think all that does is give service to our community people who want to call us. I don't know about you. I use cards. I use a lot of those cards. Does anybody else use the cards? Maybe you don't use the cards. It don't matter.
I do.
Hey, this is Daryl. Mark, I'm with you. If your card has your name on it, you're standing on somebody's front porch and you say, hey, listen, if this pops up again, give me a call. Let's think about this from the constituent standpoint. He wants to reach out directly to you. And, we don't want to have the call rerouted. He may want to call you at 10 o'clock at night. And I think that's why having your name, your number on the card is important. You can put the council office on as well, but I think the councilman ought to have his phone number on there. And if he goes out, he goes out. It's not the end of the world. We'll get it through the council office. He'll get it. He calls the council clerk. He says, hey, Revolt's gone. Who do I talk to out there? Clerk tells him, bang. And they get him a new card. But I'm with you, Mark. I think that if you have a card, it ought to have your personal number on it. If you elect it, that.
Anybody else?
No, I agree, Mark.
I think that's a good point. Why don't we amend that and we can put, it could still have the office number, but you have the option to put your cell phone number on.
Yeah, absolutely.
The
So
discretion,
to that extent, that would be good.
the discretion of the council member.
Actually, that's a better approach. Have both numbers, because if you're on vacation or something, you don't get a call, you can at least call the clerk office and the clerk will reach out to you.
That'd be good.
all right.
Just making a note here. Anybody have any comments on any of the other sections 1 through 7? Okay. I feel that we have enough support for that, so let's move that on to the next agenda and let's go. I'm sorry, what was that?
No, we're good.
Okay, let's go on to item D. Okay. Okay, item D, access to the records.
Great.
Ben, go ahead. You could go take this away too. Go ahead.
Definitely it's not stuff. I don't feel like it's.
As I mentioned earlier in my presentation, some of the, first, all of the records books have high value to the city, so we have an interest in protecting them. And then second, some of them are over 100 years old, and so ask that members of the public gloves or masks potentially when viewing those to prevent further deterioration.
Okay, so I don't have a problem with that, Matt. So
Hey,
That's pretty standard.
Matt, this is Daryl. The rules that have been proposed align nicely with those rules that one would find at a historic archive.
Agreed, 100%.
This is not unusual in terms of record security. You can only get one at a time. You've got to use gloves. There's supervision, etc. So I think we're on safe ground there.
Okay. Man, I'd say we move that forward too. It's full.
Let's go ahead and move that forward, and then
Like
let's go to item E. Item E is going to be acknowledgement of a record that went missing. Ben, go ahead.
Again, as we mentioned earlier, volume 37 of the council journal went missing. Thankfully, all of the records that were in that journal were scanned into the computer, so I was able to fully recreate the journal. This is just a resolution acknowledging that essentially that happened, that it went missing, and that it has since been.
Ben, this
Okay,
is,
and just to clarify, it is digital. I mean, it was saved digital. It hasn't been edited. It is just rescanned instead of the actual original paper document, correct?
Correct. So they are scans of the original paper.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Now, are we going to transfer that back to paper? Don't we have to?
Yes, I've actually already reprinted the books and locked them up in the cabinet.
Now, in doing so, will this resolution acknowledging the loss, is that all we need to do, or is there going to be some sort of, I don't know, like an asterisk attached to this, the paper copy, or acknowledgement that it's a reproduction?
I can certainly put into it a note that this is a.
well,
Is that a guideline that we need to follow, or?
Well, that's what I'm asking. I mean, what's the?
Jeff, to answer
Public
your
records, I am required to have a copy that I can produce if someone were to make a public records request. It does not necessarily have to be the original. Obviously, we would prefer to still have the originals, but unfortunately.
Okay. All right. Gotcha.
Jeff, this
Yes,
is
sir.
Darrell. If you look at the, I think the third whereas in the proposed resolution, it does acknowledge that this is a reproduction.
Oh, okay.
You might want to pull one of those down into one of the sections, because that's the actual ordinance. And the second thing is should we, Ben, have some reference to the fact that the clerk certifies to the best of his ability that this is true, complete, and accurate record, so that we believe it is fully complete?
You certainly can, yes.
So we have addressed that issue in discussion, and to the best of your ability, you're certifying to the best of your ability that it is complete.
Yes. So for every meeting date that I could find, there is new reproduction.
Perfect. Okay.
Good stuff. Ben, thank you for all your
support for that. So I'll move that forward.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. And thanks, Matt. Thanks for initiating and moving things forward. Good ideas.
Thank you.
Yeah, Ben, Matt, and Daryl all put in work on
Yes,
this.
Daryl, you too.
Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, that concludes your portion, correct, Matt?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, sir. All right, moving on. Water, sewer, rubbish. Chairman Soretta, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I'll let Rob talk about this relocation of some replacement city water lines out there. Looks like where that roundabout's going to be around Orion. Rob, you want to take that over?
Yes.
Are you online? Yeah.
Yes, I'm here, sir.
Mm-hmm.
You hear me?
Yep.
Okay, good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, this is one the county commissioners through the county engineer's office came to us. It's obviously outside the city limits, but I'm quite excited about this. They wish to collaborate with us. They could have worked with other government agencies, but in about a year and a half, the county engineer's got about 2.7 million in federal dollars, and he's looking to get the local share through OPWC, and to collaborate with them really strengthens their OPWC grant. Because of their project, we're probably going to have about possibly up to $400,000 worth of relocation work that we would have to do to accommodate those roundabouts. But since we're outside the city, we'd have to bear all that cost, no different than Spectrum Cable or AEP. And teaming with them, we'll be able to get, if they're successful with their grant application, maybe half of that covered. And so the grant would pay for that, even though it's outside the city, which is great for us and it's good for them. It's sort of a win-win for both of us. It's really our fourth project we've worked together closely on and struck agreements with the commissioners and the engineer just in the last few years, with the Whipple Everhard project last year, Apple Grove earlier this year, and now the East Maple Bridge. So really continuing that collaboration and gives us the ability to update our facilities out there as well as part of their overall roadway project.
All right, good. That's a big entryway too, and it looks like a pretty interesting project with those roundabouts. So sounds like we're saving some money. You wanted this on emergency or bidding processes, or
yes,
what?
Yes, please, because the OPWC applications are due Friday, October 16th. So that way we would have that all in order by that time.
Okay. Anyone else? Any questions about any of it?
I believe it's under streets and alleys, guys, FYI.
No, I think we were switched over. They're done. Yeah, it was earlier change in that. So
Okay, I must not have the updated one.
No,
Sorry.
you don't. Yeah, he changed it. So, okay. So we'll go on to B then. And B has something to do with, our Ohio Public Works Commission for grants. This is, if I'm not mistaken, on Glenwood from Donner, which is at the middle bottom of the hill, all the way up to the top of the hill where the road Hillcrest, no pun intended, Hillcrest, get that? And then it cuts down Hillcrest to the middle school.
Right, exactly.
And then down Donner, it looks like to Glendale.
Yep, we've got a little piece on Donner. Basically, it's a continuation of what we had done last year in front of the hospitals. Our Glenwood, we'll call that phase 1 water line. This year, I'd like to apply for Ohio Public Works Commission funding. And again, those applications are due Friday, October 16th. And just like to put in a 51.49% grant. I think we need to do the project even if we're unsuccessful with the grant. The water line is, obviously the roadway is in horrible shape. Well, the water line is underground. So we would clean up the curb and gutters, repave the road, and have a new water line in that area. We've had quite a few breaks, and it's been tough on Brian Hill and his staff to properly maintain that section.
Hey, Rob, this is Daryl. That is the finished water line, correct? Not the raw water line.
Exactly right. Yes, there's also a raw water line from the well fields to the plant, but no, this would be the finished water line, and it'd be the same line that we replaced in front of the hospitals last year.
Okay. And we're going to be redoing that road then at that point too, I take it.
Yes, once we got the water line in underground, there's some sections are really horrible heaved and salt is eating a lot of the curb and gutter. So we'll replace that while we're in there and then mill and repave the whole street to get rid of our water line trench and just sort of clean that up. Of all our gateway streets, we've been working hard the last couple of years, but that's pretty much an eyesore right now. So
yeah. I know that sometimes this is going to be a sore subject, but is there a way we can get a sidewalk in there when we're working on this now? This has been an issue with a lot of people that want to walk down to Price Park, walk down. I mean, we're going to do this road. Is there a way that we can fit in a sidewalk of some sort? Because, sidewalk gets at the top of the hill, it just stops.
Yeah, I really haven't, to be honest, really taken a hard look at that, but we certainly can.
I concur on that. This is Dominic. The school stops up at the top of the hill on the corner of Glenwood and Rose Lane. Well, it's not Rose Lane, it's Cordelia. Or not Cordelia, but Fair Oaks. So it comes down all the way to the park. That would be nice on the north side.
I mean, we've got that great sidewalk at the bottom of the hill, and people want to get down there, and the sidewalk ends at the top of the hill, and people can't get down to where they want to go. And that, I think that's a big, transportation, just walking nowadays back up and down that area. And you see people walking in the side of the road because there is no sidewalk. That's a very dangerous situation there. So if we could check on that, Rob, really appreciate that.
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Any
Mark,
other,
I would support you 100% on that, Mark, just as I support the 7th Street Hill. sidewalk as well. I think those two roads need it.
I want to weigh in, this is Foltz. I'm not against this as long as we're going to take care of some sidewalks we already have. I think if we're moving this direction, I haven't voted against anything, guys, but 7th Street and East Hill. I think if we're going to look at a new venture here or a new perspective on sidewalks, I definitely, Rob, and we talked about it, I want to revisit Portage to have some kind of streetscaping done, whether it's just off the sidewalk itself and replace the existing sidewalks that are in very bad condition, some of them. And Woodrow, I think we got to set aside some money for those because those have been maintained by residents or the public. And, you know, if we're going to put new sidewalks in without charging the residents for any assessments, I think we owe it to replace the ones that we have that are in need of repair. So I'm just asking this council to look at that for the future as far as some kind of policy or set aside in money for those projects also.
I think we have something already set up for the sidewalks existing. From Pat can chime in on that.
I don't know where we're at on that, if we may used any of that money or whatever, but you know, we're getting to a point where age of our sidewalks are old, just like he said. We need to start budgeting money like we do roads. What difference does it make? We want things to make so they're safe out there. I agree with you. I walk a lot, and there are some points where you can't even get a stroller up top of because it's so far apart. Now,
You're right.
Where are we at with that? On Woodrow, yes, but yes, even on West Maple Street, there's some really bad sections and so on. So we need to do something about that, whether we budget it or we start getting really tough on the actual ordinances and so on. But that could be a good discussion.
We did adopt the sidewalk program last year, had it in the budget where we'd share the cost with the residents.
Yep.
I think we had something like $150,000 in this year's budget. But when COVID hit, you know, we were asked to look at things that maybe we could temporarily put the brakes on, and that was one of them. So.
And back to the point, Mark, I think East Hill, 7th Street, there's not going to be any charge to the resident. So, you know, it might be more welcoming to get that done depending on how the resident feels about somebody walking next to their house and they haven't had that done before. But I think it's inherently unfair just to say we're going to start setting aside money for those and then it's 50-50 everywhere else. If we're going to start, you know, capital improvements towards complete street structure improvements, including the sidewalk. So that's all I want council to think about. If we're going to change direction, I'm more than willing to say, okay, and vote for these, you know, like Glenwood, if there's not a lot of blowback from the residents, but I think we owe it to say then it's 100% to the other sidewalks that need done. And we're going to set aside certain money for that.
I agree with that.
On Woodrow or wherever else in the city we need it done. That's all I'm asking this council to do, to be consistent with that.
Yeah, I agree. Maybe set aside a good discussion, section on that, because you know we do need to get sidewalks where people want to go, but we still need to fix the old ones. Maybe we can really come up with some things, rather than just going, off the side like we're doing right here. So let's get our heads
and maybe a
together on
budget to see how much it would really cost.
We
need some costs as well.
This is Dominic. Can we put it on meeting of the whole and have a discussion about our sidewalk plan? Since COVID, we get a control of that, and we fix the existing and figure out our connection points.
Right, and we can talk about it then. Let's do that, Dom. Put that on, or suggest you put that on. It should go on and get through Jeff, and I'm sure they'll be happy to do that. All right,
Rob, Rob, will you be able to get some costs? I mean, I don't think we can have a discussion without knowing how much the costs are going to be.
Sure. Yeah. Good rule of thumb is about $8 square foot for that.
Yep. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, council members.
Finish with mine. Sorry, Jeff.
Mr. Chairman, this is
Patrick.
Patrick.
An emergency, right? That Glenwood, that street water line replacement we were talking about?
To meet that October 16th deadline.
Okay, so we'll get that on. All right. Sorry, Pat, go ahead.
I was just going to say, Mr. Chairman, in light of what you said, to try to, in regards to Glenwood and the sidewalk, and I agree with you that if we're going to do that, there couldn't be a better time to do it than what you're proposing. But I want to make sure that council is aware of the process that needs to be gone through before we get to that stage. In the areas where there are no sidewalks, we have to have engineering conduct some field work onto whether or not we have the right of way or whether we need to acquire right of way. As up on 7th Street, where we're talking about putting in sidewalks where there aren't any, if there's a resident who objects to the sidewalk, then council's or the city's recourse to that is to force the sidewalk into place, which would require a taking, which would be in the form of an eminent domain action in court. So that can kind of gum things up. So if we want to do this for next year, we should probably start inventorying who would be in favor of having the sidewalk on Glenwood and be willing to give us the easement or the right of way as needed. And those that aren't, then we would have to go that other route. So I would recommend that if to fulfill your request here that I direct the engineer to begin that work.
Patrick, Dominic here. Is there like a normal easement anyhow from curb in where like the devil strip and sidewalks would be on all properties? Like
Not necessarily, it varies by street.
Because I was just curious because they stop it right there at the corner. And then I know there's grant money for the ADA accessible corners. So that's why I was just thinking that, depending on how wide the sidewalk is, like 4 foot.
It varies by street. It can be wide. The city has a right of way, or it can be in some parts of 7th Street. We only have 4 feet.
Okay. Well, we should probably look into that if we can check the engineering, see if we have to go knock on doors.
You hear that, Rob?
I do. Thank you. Yep.
Okay.
Let me know and I can knock on doors. Not a problem.
Okay. Thank you.
And I'm finished with my section, Jeff. Thank you.
Jeff, you there?
Yep. Sorry about that. I was muted. I don't know how I got muted. Sorry about that. Next up, Street and Alley, Chairman Fonte.
Okay, so this is the city confirmed the work was completed. They want to release the 2 lots over in Monticello to AMC Land Company, Ltd. Rob, if you have anything else you want to chime in about it?
No, that's perfect. AMC called and we've whittled it down to just 2 lots we were holding for them to finish their sidewalk in all 7 phases that they've constructed. That work has been done, so there's no need to hold that bond any longer. And it's my understanding they have a pending sale on one of the 2 lots.
Nice.
Okay, so that will be under emergency?
If it's
Yes.
permitted, yes, I think to help them out would be nice.
Okay. All right. Very good. All right. Thank you, Dom and Rob. That concludes our agenda. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Oh, hey, real quick, Jeff.
Yep.
There's no meeting next week, right?
That is correct.
Okay, just so everybody knows. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'll make
Yeah,
that motion, Jeff.
Yeah, Ben's got the meeting schedule on the, I didn't have that on my agenda. Sorry.
Okay, there
Ben.
you go.
Yep.
September
There it is.
14th is the next meeting. All right. I'll make a motion to adjourn, President Peters.
Do we have a
So
second?
moved, Waring.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned. Everyone have a great evening.
Have a
Thank
nice
Thank
Labor
you.
Day.
Thanks for everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
All right.
Happy Labor Day.
Good evening.